So we have discussed equations, sine and cosine graphs, right? So we have to come up with, we've looked at the graphs, we've talked about the amplitude, we've talked about the period is not the period, we've talked about the midline is the d value, we've talked how to find the range. We do the midline plus the amplitude, the midline minus the amplitude. We've talked about all that. What we have not discussed is if I give you a graph and ask for an equation, right? Now we did talk about sine and cosine graphs. Sine and cosine graphs are the exact same, but what? Yeah.
They're phase shifted pi over 2.
They're phase shifted pi over 2 or 90 degrees, right? Right, left, and I can get them to land on top of each other. So if I was asking you to find a sine graph or a cosine graph, would it change how I found the amplitude? No. Would it change how I found the midline? The middle of the graph? No. Would it change how often it repeats itself? No. What's the only thing that changes between a cos and a sine graph? Yeah, the shift. That shift, right? That shift changes, which makes it move on the y-intercept. Now, makes sense? So we're going to find, normally I find the A, and then I find the D, and then I find the B, and I'm like, wow, we got it all. No. Boom, hitting the C. That's what we're doing right off the bat. So I want everyone to, no I don't, I got a calculator in front of me. I want everyone to use the big brains and look at this. Okay. Whew. Ready? Cos x. There we go, that's all I want you to do. You're looking at the cos x graph. Everyone's looking at the cos x graph. The cos x graph is in front of your face. The cos x graph. Would you agree? Okay. Let's think about this. I have a cos x graph. I have 0 and 1. Everyone's looking, right? If I change the A value, does it change my y-intercept? Does it move it off the y-axis? If I change my A value, it's a vertical stretch. Does it move it off the y-axis? It doesn't move it off. It'll move it up. It can move it down, right? But it will not move it off. Okay? So if I change my A value, it will not move my maximum off. We agree? What if I change my horizontal stretch? Because it's 0 in y, if I multiply by a horizontal stretch, is it going to move it off? No. What about a vertical translation? It'll move it up, it'll move it down, but will it move it off? What's the only thing that will move your maximum off of the y-axis? I knew you guys were smart. Single tier. Yes, a horizontal phase shift. So, if we look at the graph, and the maximum is not on the y-axis. The y-axis, what do we know then? There is a horizontal phase shift for positive cos, right? Remember, our amplitude gets us our vertical stretch, but then our A could be positive or negative, right? So we are going to go do all of the horizontal shifts for positive cos. Let's go. All right. So down here, we're going to have this. We're going to have y equals, we don't know A. What am I doing? Why did I make such a far distance of my... Y equals, it's going to be positive, whatever A is. I don't know what it is. Cos. B, don't know what that is. X plus D. Don't know what that is. We agree? I'm just going for the C's right now. On the positive cos. Do we agree? I don't have A. That's amplitude. Figure it out later. Don't have B. That's from the period. It is not the period, because that would be a period, and that's stupid. D is the midline. We do not have that either, but I'm leaving blanks, because we're going to fill those in. Because the hardest part, I promise you, is the C. Everyone's like, I got A, I got B, I got D, and then they wing C. You don't want to wing it. It's going to get you the wrong equation, right? And you'll know you're wrong, because you can type it in, and then it's wrong, and then you single tier, and you're like, I can't fix it. Okay, we're not going to get there. Ooh, I need an extra graph. So, we're going to look here. Where is my maximum? Is it on the y-axis? Is there a horizontal shift for a positive cos? No. I'm done. Okay, next one. Because I can put a plus 0, but what does that matter? No point, right? That was the easiest C. So if on that graph I was allowed to pick whatever equation I wanted, I would be picking a positive cos graph because my maximum was on the y-axis. Do you think if they give you an option, they're going to let you pick the positive cos graph? Probably not. But if they do, if they just say determine a cos graph of this, I'm picking positive cos. They might say A is less than 0 to force you to have to do a shift, right? Okay, cool, we're here. Y equals blank cos blank x plus blank. We fill the blanks in later. And this is a positive cos, so I gotta put a plus in front of my A. Okay. Is my maximum on the Y? No. Is there a shift? Which direction is it to? Tricky question. You could say right or left. So often they'll ask for the shortest horizontal movement. But could they not pick this one? Could they not pick that one? Absolutely they could. So you have to watch multiple choice wise. They could pick a longer one. They could say I moved it left this much, which would be plus 1.25 pi, right? Or often they'll go with the fastest, and by fastest I mean shortest, which is 0.75 pi to the right. So I'm going to put it in as minus, what was it, 0.75 pi? Is that hard to find? No. Moving on. We're so good. Look at this. Genius level. This is, we brought our big brains. I can't speak. Our big brains. Our big brains. Okay. Y equals blank cos blank x. Find that C plus blank. And I want to do a positive A, so I'm going to put that there. Is our maximum on the y-axis?
Yes. Minimum.
True. So we're going for what probably next on that one? Which means you have no. Yeah. Negative cos down, no shift on this one. You good? Everybody up top too. We're such geniuses. Cool. Okay, so this one and this one are equidistant. Isn't that a great word? It's like at least $1. Okay. You could go to the right or the left. This would be the best question ever, because if you totally forgot that you've changed the sign for horizontal shifts, you're screwed on the rest of the test. But you would do really well on this question, right? Positive, bad for the rest, positive for here. Okay, I'm going to shift it to the left. 0.33. So what should we going to do? Plus. Okay, we're going back to the original. I know there's more, but we're on a Friday. I usually do this on a not Friday. Therefore, I do more of the graph. Shoop, 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 shoop. Back. Okay. Ooh, got a little happy with mine. Okay. Because David likes to go into theaters and destroy people's lives and tell them how movies end, he also just did this cos. But that's okay. I appreciate it. Negative cos. Yeah, you've done it a few times. It's fine. What happens when we have a negative cos? It's reflected about the x-axis. So our maximum becomes a... So now we're going to look and see what? If the minimum is on the y-axis. If the minimum is not on the y-axis, it has been shifted. Because our vertical stretch will move it up or down, but still on the y. Our vertical translation will move it up or down, still on the y. Our horizontal stretch will not move it because our horizontal value, which is 0, don't matter, right? If you multiply anything by 0, it's going to stay. So the only thing that can move that minimum is the horizontal shift. I feel like I'm a rabbit. See? It's real. Okay. I should have been that for Halloween. I'm not. Okay, next year. All right, so I've lost time to practice to get into true rabbit spirit. All right, so we're going to look at minimums. All right, y equals, what's the only thing changing? Negative a. And obviously, our c. All right. Oops, got a little. Now what we got to put? Yeah. Right, because either of them are equidistant. Could they also then maybe do further and further and further? Sure. I don't see them doing it, but they could. You could pick every single time there's a minimum and put that, right? You could. Technically, that would be a C. Shift it, like I bypassed this one and I shifted a whole bunch and it's still going to end up there, right? So I'm going to go, you're going to do whatever you want. You can pick positive or negative. What was it now? I don't even remember. I'm going to go to the right. You can go to the left. It doesn't matter, right? Sometimes when there's options, people cry, but we're not going to. Okay. Is my minimum on the what? No. Where is my minimum? So I can either go to the left, 0.25 pi, or the right, 1.75 pi. We agree? Would either of them work? Yes. If they say the shortest phase shift, if they say the shortest horizontal phase shift, I have to go right. Also, if they go x minus c, and they say c has to be greater than or equal to 0, you have to go to the right. So you have to watch which one. They sometimes will limit you. Yeah.
You said that we needed to go to the right in this scenario if they ask for the shortest one?
No, we have to go to the left. Like we're sorry, I said right. We have to go plus. Next thing. We have to put a plus because we're going to the left. We're going to the left. No, this one's this. This one's this. This one's that. This.
Oh, no, I was looking for
The maximum?
down.
Yeah. Okay. So you have to watch. If they go x minus c, and then c has to be greater than or equal to 0, you have to pick the one to the right. Do you agree? You see what I'm saying? X minus c, c has to be greater than or equal to 0. They're forcing you to the right. So you have to watch. They can force you to the further distance. But then you could actually go the next distance and really play with their emotions. I wouldn't, but you could. Okay, so I'm going to go shortest distance, so I'm going to go plus 0.25 pi. So y equals negative cos x plus 0.25 pi. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next one. The next one's the best thing ever. Why? The minimum is on the y-axis. So if I'm given an option for this graph, guess which one I'm picking? Negative cos, because it has no c. And when I have no c, I throw a party. In my head, not for all of you. But in here, you can't see it, but there's balloons, there's cake. Glamorgan Bakery cake, not just any cake. Yes, exactly. On this case, when you pick that, if you knew to do that, Glamorgan cake. No Safeway cake, even though it's pretty good. But no Safeway. And I don't mean like the Safeway cake you buy, I mean the Safeway cake you order. It's got like, it's great. Try it, have it. Negative cos. I feel like I'm selling their stuff. You could go x plus 0. Do we? No. Do we really need the excessive brackets that I'm putting here? No, but I'm going to anyway, because I'm a rebel. Okay. Cos is easier than sine for most people. We're going to dig deep. It's fine. It's not really that hard, I promise you. Everything is good. We are happy. Okay. Positive cos, we look for the closest maximum. Negative cos, we look for the closest. And okay. Konnichiwa, I feel like I'm doing. Okay. So many options of what's going on. So, to find the sines C, if you remember this one step, it is so easy to find it. If you forget this one step, you will sit and stare for life. Everyone paying attention. Draw, thank you, bring your binoculars up. Draw the midline. Draw the midline. If you draw the midline, you will find your C really easily. If you do not draw the midline, C is hard. Now, why is that, Lepp? Well, let me tell you. Okay, go back. Now, instead of cos, we're going to put sine. What's on the y-axis? Is the maximum there?
No.
Is the minimum there?
No.
So it makes it a bit harder. You see what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to put the midline in because I am a rebel without a cause. Now, if I look at this, what is my d value? Because my d value is my midline. It's 0, so I'm going to put it in. What is on the y-axis? The midline, where the midline meets the graph, the slope of the graph. The slope of the graph that is going where? Up, positive, yeah? So if we draw our midline, where the midline intersects with the graph on the positive slope, that little intersection point, which if I have my old board, I can do it, but this one won't let me. That little intersection point should be on the y-axis. If that little intersection point is not on the y-axis, it has shifted. What do you think is going to happen with negative sign? I have to do this because David's going to ruin it for me, so I got to get it before he does. Yes, a negative slope, because it's just going to cause it to reflect. We agree? So if I draw the midline, is the C easy to find? Yes. If I don't draw the midline, you might stare at it for a long period of time and cry a little bit. So we're going to remember that step. So let's go. Let's go back. How do I find the midline? Let's go find it first. The midline is the middle distance between the highest and the lowest, correct? If I asked you for the middle average, oh, I just gave it away. The middle average of your two marks, what would you do? Add them and divide by 2. So the midline is the average. I was going to ask you that, but I gave the word away. The midline is the average between the two, correct? So when I find my amplitude, I do max minus min divided by 2. But my midline is the average. It's the middle between the two. If it's the average between the two, what would I do with the two things?
Sorry, what's the
What
question?
I had you, then I lost you. All right. If I gave you 2 scores, 2 marks you had, and I asked you for the average, you would do what with them? Add them and divide by 2. So if I want the middle line between the max and the min, what am I going to do? See, I thought I had you, but then I lost you. But now I got you back. Okay. So do not mix the amplitude up with the midline. The amplitude has a minus sign in between it, correct? Max minus min divided by 2. The midline is the average between the two, so you add them and divide by 2. Okay? So amplitude, you can either count, or you can use that formula. Remember the absolute value of the max minus the min divided by 2, which I do not give you because it's not on that formula sheet, which is the only one you get, right? But the midline is halfway between, so you average them. So let's find the midline first. So you can actually count up the amplitude, down the amplitude, and you'll meet at the midline, or you can use the formula. I will show you both. So the formula for midline is just max plus min divided by 2. It is just average. It is just the average. And sorry, it should say y equals because it is a midline. Yes, we need the y because it's a line. And the midline is just the average. It's just a fancy way of saying the average. So this one in particular is 10 and negative 10. So I'm going to go 10 plus negative 10 divided by 2, which is 0 divided by 2, which is?
Sneaking suspicion might be 0.
Y equals 0. Sneaking suspicion, correct. We got there. Okay, so we draw the line at y equals 0. The other way you can do it is finding the amplitude. What is the amplitude of this graph? It'd be negative 10 to 10, which is a distance of? Negative 10 to 10 is a distance
20.
of 20, and half of that is 10. You guys are giving me the amplitude. So if I count up 10, which is my amplitude, and I count down 10, which is my amplitude, I should land on the midline. That's another way to check it, which we found out was y equals 0. So we're going to draw that, because if we need to find a sine graph, no matter what we do, we're drawing the midline, and I'm labeling it. I'm labeling it y equals 0, and then the very next thing I do when I draw my midline, after I draw my midline, this will get you your C's or not. This is your turning point. This is the TSN turning point of C is happening, C is not happening. We draw our midline, and then we bold the intersection points that are close to the y-axis. Let's go. Did I just bold 2 intersection points with the midline? Yeah. One is your negative C, one is your positive sign. One's for negative sign, one's for positive sign. Those are your C values. That's it. That's how easy it's going to be. You draw your midline, and you put those intersection points with about the midline, about the y-axis. Okay? One of them is going to be the C for negative sign, one of them is going to be the C for positive sign. Do you see how I found those? Because that's the key thing. Once you find them, you have the C's. That's not the hard part. It's getting there. Draw the midline, intersections around the y. We agree? We agree. Good thing it's Friday. We agree. All right, cool. Which one of them is the positive? Which one is for the positive sign and which one is for the negative sign? Yep.
Negative pi or the c value of positive pi. Like plus
Pardon?
pi for the formula, plus pi for the formula, but negative pi on the graph.
I feel like you lost me. Like I lost you guys about 5
The
minutes
one on
ago.
the left.
The one on the left is for which?
Positive sign.
Okay. And the one on the right is for?
Negative sign.
Negative sign. Yes, we totally agree with you. But why?
Because the one on the left is the positive slope. The one
Yeah.
on the right.
So if I draw my little arrow through it, this one has a positive slope and this one has a negative slope because slopes are from left to right. So I always draw the intersection and then draw some arrows with it. If you don't need the arrows, don't worry about the arrows, but I always draw the arrows because it gives me a way, like if they're going up, it's positive, it's going down, it's negative, right? So this is going to be the C for my positive sign, and this is going to be the C for my negative sign. Does that make sense? So to find your C for sine, you draw the midline, get the closest intersections with the graph, arrows. Then you'll have your C's. If you just follow that step, C's are really, really easy. People will leave this class being like, I have no idea what you just did. And I feel like, like when I'm done the lesson, I'm like, drop the mic, this was good. And then they come back to me, they're like, I have no idea how to find the C's. And I'm like, dang it, I thought it went so well. So I'm hoping by at least 9:58. In social, biochem, I don't really care where you are. It's good. Okay, so let's go. Positive cos. We did it already. Positive sine. Blank. X. What's positive sign going to be? Is that pi? So we're going to go to the left, so we have to do plus 5. Lord, you've been so good to me lately. And then usually it does it 4 times. Okay. And then the negative sign is what? Minus, because they're just equidistant again, right? And the downwards one. And guys, we have this. Do we have to put the plus 0 at the back, or could we just have it wrote nothing? We could have just wrote nothing. Because remember, our midline is our D, so D equals 0. The moment we find our midline, we have our D. We're done. Does that make sense? Find your midline, get your D, plop it in, draw it, and that, C's. Okay, next one. So I got to find my midline first. My lowest is -2, my highest is 2. So it's going to be y equals max plus min divided by 2. So it's going to be positive 2 plus negative 2 divided by 2. Weirdly enough, it's 0 again. So my D equals 0. I know that, so I'm just going to go. Okay. Before I go to do my positive sign, and negative sign, okay. How can I get my C's for sine? For positive cos, it's the max on the y. Negative cos, it's the closest min. Sine, I have to draw the midline, circle the intersection points on both sides of the y-axis, the closest ones. So my midline is at y equals 0. So here I go. Pretend that's completely straight. It is not. It's actually shameful. It's as good as it's going to get on the screen. I draw my midline. If the midline is close to your maximum, you do not have the right midline. Try again. I have some people like, well, I found the midline perfectly, and it's this far from the max, and the min's way down here. I'm like, that is not the middle. So you go back, try again. So I found the midline. All right. I bold the intersection and the graph, and I arrow from left to right like I read. I bold, and I arrow from left to right like I read. So which one is the negative sign? The one on the left, and the positive sign is the one on the right because the arrow is going up. Do you see that? Everyone sees that? So this one I'm just going to help myself out. This one's going to be for the negative sign. This one's going to be for the positive sign. Okay, so we have 0.75 pi is for the negative sign. So I'm going to go x plus 0.75 pi. And this one we have x minus 0.25? 0.25 pi. Okay? Over. I'm just going to, yeah. Then we're going to try example 3 together, because it's, if you haven't noticed, these ones are all symmetrical about the y-axis. Your midline's going to move off the y, right? It's not always going to be on there. Okay. So this one, we're going to find our midline. It's between -2 and 2, which we just did. So what would our midline be? Y equals 0. So I'm going to draw it. And remember, your C is always the x value, right? It's just the x value where it lands. So what's this one going to be at? This one's my negative sign. This one's my positive sign. If the min to the max gets me to 0.33, what's half of that?
0.33 over 2.
Yeah, which was that?
0.16.
0.33 over 2.
So for the negative sign, I'm going to put plus 0.165. For the positive sign, I'm going to put minus 0.165, right? Try again. It was plus. No, it was minus, right?
For which one?
Positive.
For positive.
Yeah, it was nice.
Because it was on the right. I don't really need the plus zeros. I'm doing them to prove a point. Okay, let's go get the amplitudes. So the amplitude, we can do half the distance from min to max, which is 10, or we can use that formula, right? The formula for the amplitude is the absolute value of max minus min divided by 2, because it's not the average. So it's going to be absolute value of 10 minus negative 10 divided by 2, which is 20 divided by 2, which is 10. Or I can count. Negative 10 to 10 is 20, divided by 2 is 10. So all of my A's are 10. Because remember, the A, the B, and the D are the same in all of them. All they are is just a shift away from each other, right? All that changes on all of these is the shift. Well, and the positive and negative signs because of the reflections. Okay? Come on, join me. Okay. Amplitude of this one, if I use my formula, is absolute value of 2 minus negative 2 divided by 2, which is 4, divided by 2, which is 2. I know I'm right if I can count up to and I can count down to, and they meet at the midline, right? So my A's are 2. I used to save worst for last, the C value for last, but I feel like if you do it first, that's the hardest part. Get it over with, then deal with the rest. You also have to find a midline first if it's a sine anyways. And then the amplitude for this one is 2 as well, because it's the same thing. Negative 2 minus, or sorry, plus 2 minus and minus 2. Okay. I I find the amplitude's really easy to find and the midline's really easy to find because even if you're not really great at it, you can fill it into the formula and it gets you answers. Correct? There's 2 formulas for it. The period is the hardest thing harder to find than the A and the D. So I would say it's the second hardest, and then usually people find C the hardest. And A and D are, unless you mix up the formulas, A and D are easy. Okay? So let's go back and get the period. The period is not the period. The period is the period. So here it gives you a little sum up of what you're looking for your C's. I just showed it at the beginning, but I explained it now. So the period of this graph. I can go from a max to a max. I can go from a min to a min. I can go from a max to a min or a min to a max, but then I just have to times it by 2. I can start on the y-axis, go past a max, past a min, back to the same spot. That also is a period, correct? Numerous options. Which one's best? The one you can actually find. Sometimes a max to a max you can't actually find because they don't give you the x values of both of them. So for this one, it would be a max to a max, would be what I would do. So it's from 0 to 4 pi. So the period is 4 pi. I promise you, if this is a multiple choice, 2 of the questions will have 4 pi in for B. Totally incorrect. Cross those babies out, move on, right? But that's a common error, is to put the period in for B. Just call it a day, right? You see how that could be an error that people would do? Period is not the B period, so I need to find the B value. To get the B, I can either, to get the B, I always just use the formula anyways. So remember, it's period equals 2 pi over B. And I'm using this one because this is latently in radians, because my x-axis was in radians. 2 pi divided by B. The B and the P just swap. So it's 2 pi divided by P. So this one's going to be 2 pi divided by 4 pi, which is a half. And then all of my B's are a half. And if I typed every single one of these in, which I'm not going to do on a Monday, I would type every one of these in because I have different colors, and you'll see color, 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 color. They just draw the exact same graph, right? Because they are the same graph. We agree? Okay, next page. So the period of this graph, you could go from max to max and subtract them. Or I'm going to start at the y-axis because I always try there first. So I start at the y-axis, I'm at this height. Now if on the y-axis it's not a max or a min, you have to go past a max and min first before you get back to that height until you created your period. So I go past a max, past a min, back up to that height. What's it at? 2 pi. So the period is 2 pi. Then B is going to be what? 1. B is always 1 if its period is 2 pi. There's no horizontal stretch, right? That's what your normal graph sits at. But we're going to prove a point. So it's 2 pi divided by P. So it's 2 pi divided by 2 pi, which is 1. Do I have to write the ones? No. But I'm proving a point. Okay, next one. Here I can go from a min to a min, which is how much? 0.67. Now some people say, is that degrees or radians? Is there a degree symbol on that? So what is it? Radians. So our B is going to be 2 pi divided by 0.67. You can even just leave it like that. The worst thing you can do is give me a rounded decimal. Do not give me a rounded decimal because that is not B. That is a rounded decimal that is very close to B, but it is not B. You cannot round. You could reduce 2 and 0.67 if you wanted to. Like if you go 2 divided by 0.67, math, enter, enter. Try it out. 2 divided by 0.67. 2 divided by 0.67, math, enter, enter. What does it get you? Nope, math, enter, enter. Don't put the pi in. 2 divided by 0.67. 200 over 67. It's just moving the decimals.
Isn't that what it said on the graph?
It's 0.67. You have to use what's there.
But if you go
You
from
guys are saying it's 1/3 and 2/3. You can't because 0.67 is not 2/3.
On the scale graph though, can't you just go
No,
from
it
there?
is what it is.
Yeah, the graph is.
So it's going to be, you could put 200 pi over 67, yeah?
Nathan's frozen.
In terms of this graph, depending on where you look, you get a slightly different answer. So if you go min to min, it's 0.67 like you said, but if you go from the two maxes, it's 0.66.
Do you know what? The person who made this graph, who was not me, who will remain unnamed because I don't know who it is because I stole it off the internet. Oh, I did not actually say that. I made it myself. I'm sorry, I just rounded weird, and I apologize. I made that graph really weird. I should have just left it as 1/3 and 2/3, but I rounded wrong. So I put 0.67 because I rounded, and that proves the point that if you round before you've done your answer, what happens? Bad things. So I'm sorry, when I made that graph myself, I did foolish things. I should have wrote 1/3 and 2/3. Will you forgive me? Yes, because you have no choice. Okay. Lead forward.
They're not using 1/3 and 2/3.
True. Yeah, when I was making that graph, foolish me. Just dumb. Okay, flip over to example 3. I want you guys to give me the equation to this one, and then I'm going to give you textbook questions. What? Now, some people will ask if this is in radians or degrees. It has to be in what? Because there's not degree symbol. So the amplitude is 2 if I use the formula. The period is pi over 2 because it's 4, and so I have to put it in as 2 pi over 4.
Max is negative.
No, it is not. Oh, that hurts me bad. Okay. You know what? I'm not even erasing it because it was an error and it's gonna just stick. Okay, what's -1 minus -7? When I went to go draw the midline, I would have caught my error because it would have not been where it should be. Foolish. I'm foolish. Okay. -4. Like I said, I immediately draw my midline. Draw where they intersect. Arrow up. Arrow down. That's going to be my positive sign. It's going to be my negative sign. See? This is going to be my positive cos. Wow, that's an aggressively thick dot. And then these could be either of my negative coses. We agree? If I had a choice, what graph am I picking? Positive cos, because it has no C shift. We agree? All right. Gotta make this not, wow, it really thickened it up. Cool. Okay. So let's go through. So I'm going to get y equals positive. My a was what now? 3. Cos. My b is pi over 2. My x is just an x. I can put in brackets or not. And my d is minus 1. My negative cos is going to be y equals negative 3 cos pi over 2. The only thing that changes is my shift. And my shift for negative cos is where the mins are. And they're at negative 2 or positive 2. So I'm going to go minus 2. If you put plus 2, you'd be right. And then why does this board hate me? Seriously now. If I move it too fast and don't wait, it has a lagging time, and it just jolts me where I was. Slow me down. Do you know it's a Friday board? Do you know? Now I just didn't even write the 3. Oh my gosh. Sine pi over 2. Did this one go to the right or the left? I can't remember. There was 1. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, page 253 is number 15 and 16. Number 15 is for sine, and number 16 is for cos. If I were you, I would do sine and cos for all of them. And if you're like, but then there's no answer key, I'll give you the look of dismay. Because the answer key could be you just typing it in and seeing if it matches. And I would practice that to make sure you have the right modes. So if you change your window to match the window that's in the textbook, right? And your window's in radians, what does your mode have to be? Not trickery, radians. And if you're typing something in degrees, these are all in radians. Thanks, textbook. You didn't make this hard at all. Okay, they're all in radians. Yeah.